We have gorgeous geums growing in our garden, and it's the reddy orange ones. I think they're either Mrs. Bradshaw or Scarlet Tempest. But whichever ones they are, they're really lovely to paint, and I have chosen quite a frilly one to paint here today. Here's the flowers in my garden, and I have already drawn it out. It's not the easiest drawing to do, so I've drawn it out already, and I'm painting in the whole flower in yellow. What I thought I would do though is, if you're wanting to paint this flower, let me know in the comments and I will provide a link to a line drawing of the flower for you, so the drawing doesn't put you off getting going with this painting. I'm starting with a mix of red and orange, and I'm filling in lots of the areas that I can see that are quite distinct from other areas of the petals. And it's a good way to help me see what areas should remain paler and what areas should become a lot darker. So it's just a good way of getting going. Some of the areas I'm just painting straightforwardly with the reddy orange colour, and some of the areas I'm cleaning the paint out of my brush after I've put a little bit of paint down, and then I'm blending out the colour a little bit. So I'm checking back and forth to the reference photo to see how what I've painted compares with the photo. And at this stage, what I'm doing is I'm going in and adding a bit of purer red, so it's a much darker colour, into areas I can see that are darker or are a lot redder. And I basically go round and round the flower doing this, so filling in different parts of the petal in different colours. So you can see here I had waited until the reddy orange colour had dried before I added that red colour to the tip there. Now, sometimes I do that. Sometimes I wait for the colour to dry before I go back in with a second colour, but other times I don't. Other times I might put the wet paint in on top of the first layer of paint, which is still wet, and that can help it blend quite nicely as well. So here I had added the intense red, and then I'm going back in with the less intense orange and washing it out a little bit so the blend of the orange blends out and then blends back into the intense red. And here I'm laying down the red with quite an abrupt or sharp edge to it, although I'm blending it out as it goes down the petal. But then I'm adding red to the other side of the petal, and I'm blending that out as well, but I'm not allowing it to touch the first sharp edge of the red there. Round onto the next petal, and you can see from the reference photo this petal is quite orange. Oops, the reference photo is gone. Wait till I get it back. There it is. So yes, I was saying the petal I'm painting just now is quite orange, and it's orange all the way out to the very end of the petal. So I'm just filling in the whole petal with the orange colour here. Now the orange is still wet, and I'm going in with quite a wet and intense red, so you can watch the colour spreading as I just touch the brush to the paint there. I love that effect. So here I'm starting to paint a little bit around all the little stamen in the centre of the flower, because I'm trying to make sure they remain the pale yellow. And I'm continuing round again, painting the next petal just following the reference photo as best as I can. Not 100%, but we do want a good representation of the flower. So here I'm starting this petal with the more intense red, and you can see in the reference photo the edge of that petal is quite dark. You know, it's quite a dark or vibrant red. So I think that's the right way to start that petal. And then I'm just blending it out where the colour becomes a little bit paler, and then a little bit darker again as it reaches that little tip of the petal there. Again, I'm going round some of the other petals and adding in the darker frilly edges, because a lot of the edges of a lot of the petals are a fair bit darker. So I'm just going back round, refining the edges of the petals. Always blending out though, if it's a nice smooth blend in the actual petal flower. So I show a couple of ways of getting the smooth blend of the darker edges in this painting. The one I'm doing just now is where I'm going straight in with the darker colour, then I'm washing the colour out of my brush or using a paler colour. In this instance I'm using the yellow and using that to blend out the darker colour, and that's as opposed to the way I did it in the bottom petal there, which was I started off with the orange colour, left it wet, and then went back in with the wet red and touched the wet red round the edges. So these are two different ways that you can blend an additional colour into paint. And I'm just continuing going round the flower, round all the petals, and refining each one according to what I see in the reference photo and what I want to represent in the painting. Throughout the painting, the most common technique I think that I am using is putting the colour down and then blending it out to a paler colour by adding in the water. So that's the technique I think I'm using mostly in this flower. And you can see it in action here on the little bud as well. So I'm going in with a darker colour, and then I'm going back in with my brush that has the colour washed out of it, and I'm blending it up. At this stage I had lost a lot of the glow that I had in that little bud, so this is me going back in with a clean damp brush and trying to lift some of the colour from the centre of it. Here we're going round a lot of the centre stamen with darker colour to try and indicate the pale yellow stamen there. So we wouldn't be painting pale yellow on top of anything, it's too pale a colour, it wouldn't show up. So we're having to use the yellow from the background wash we did and paint round the stamen, leaving the little bits of yellow. And then I'm just blending some yellow into the centre and blending it into the orange, so that gives a nice wee transition there in the very centre. And I'm continuing painting round the stamen there with the orange colour, leaving the little round yellow parts showing. As watercolour dries paler than it looks when it's wet, I'm going back round some of the areas to intensify the darker or redder areas again to get it to my liking. So I'm painting a few of the areas in the one go, leaving hard edges, but with the intention of going back round and then softening these few areas. And that's knowing that I've left the paint wet enough to soften the areas so they're not just left with hard edges. So this is me going back round and softening the red that I've just put in. If I stopped the painting here, we would have a beautiful painting, a beautiful delicate painting. I'm continuing to add more intensity, and it's just your preference whether you keep going, add more intensity, more depth, or you prefer to keep it, at this delicate state. So I think I'm just enjoying the painting, so I'm continuing. But I would say it's not necessary to continue at this stage because you can overwork watercolour quite easily and lose the beautiful delicateness of it. So yeah, just be careful and take a step back every so often to check your painting and to decide whether actually what you've done is enough or not. I want the very bottom of this petal to have a more intense red edge to it, so I'm going back round that again. But again, what I'm doing here now is just my preference. It's not necessary to keep adding layer after layer. 2 or 3 layers are quite enough. I'm going in here to darken a sort of shadowy area round some of the stamen there. So I'll just darken round one little side of the centre of the flower. Blend it a little bit so the edges aren't sharp, and that just gives a nice little effect. I'm adding in a few pale green lines here as well, just to indicate the little stems of the stamen. And again, some more of the slightly darker colour to indicate a little bit of shadow in there. I'm putting a little bit of darker green right underneath the flower there, just to show that it's sort of coming out of the shade of the flower and down one side of the stem. And the same for the little bud. I'm adding in a little bit of darker green here to give a little bit of sharper detail to the little bud as well. Just a couple of little leaves sticking out and defining the very base of the bud. a little bit more depth on the other side of the centre of the flower as well, to help the yellow stamen stand out a wee bit as well. And that's our painting just about finished. So as I said, do let me know in the comments if you would like a line drawing of this, if that would help you get going. I don't want you not to be painting because you haven't got the line drawing. So go and paint and enjoy.